Hello, I go by that Star Wars guy on most places on the internet, and this is a feedback video about Witchfire early access build 48090. This is specifically not a review. I'm not going to touch on a lot of what the game is about. I'm only going to be talking about things that I think are problems, in the hopes that the devs will take a look at it and hopefully fix some of them. Just as a sort of qualifying my take statement, I've beaten the first level and I've beaten most of the second level up to the second boss, but I haven't defeated the second boss yet. I made one try and then I just haven't gotten around to finishing it yet. I am level 36. I have not unlocked a lot of things, and I'll get into why for a second or in a bit. But despite that, we'll quick walk through all the stuff and just give it a once over of what I have. So we'll talk about what I think is super important in the game. Kind of the main secret to success, right? And this game heavily emphasizes never getting hit. I think first and foremost, not getting hit is the best way to beat this game. And then killing stuff efficiently, which helps the never get hit part. And this is big because I think it plays a big role in how important, or rather not important, these stats are. Right? Because I think currently the stats don't really have meaningful impact on the game, apart from making it a lot harder for not a lot of benefit. Right? At a surface, or at a high level glance, I think currently only endurance and Witchfire are worth leveling right now. The main reason is that extra stamina is survival, right? More stamina means you can dash more. And Witchery is the only way to gain direct damage, right? Nothing else in this stat helps you deal more damage apart from Witchery. But let's get into some specifics, right? Currently, I think Vitality is just not worth leveling much or really at all. I think at base Vitality, I haven't really gotten one shot ever, and impacting Vitality being bad is how bad healing is in general. And that fact that most of the scenarios where I find I die in this game are when I run out of stamina or when I get frozen. And in both of those situations, more max health would not help me survive, right? Healing felt bad to level. I was hoping it would affect mushrooms. It doesn't seem to. And really, your return on investment is just awful here, right? You don't get much extra healing. The only meaningful add here is healing duration gets shorter. But even then, I don't think that's really meaningful. I wish all 10 of the levels I sent here were in Witchery instead. Endurance. Arguably the most important stat. Stamina is strictly survival in this game. The more you can run, the more you can dodge, the more you can jump, the more you never get hit, the more you live, right? Not getting hit is such a force multiplier in this game due to how its mechanics work, that stamina or endurance is a must level. It's one of the only things worth leveling. Likewise, Witchery is super valuable because spells are very powerful and the spell CDR starts to scale very quickly, right? Like 50% extra cooldown is insanely fast. I would say it's too good, except for the fact that it's the only good thing here. Metanoia is weird. I think it's probably maybe worth leveling very early on, but the higher level you are, the worse the return is. And like after a certain point, it just does not make sense to level it because it'll take so long. I think like I did some napkin math at when it costs like 10 grand to level, and I would have to earn like 250,000 Witchfire before I started going positive again versus just like leveling something else. And I don't know. Without the extra bonuses and it just skilling Witchfire income, I don't think Metanoia is really ever worth touching unless you touch it at the very beginning. But what you should be touching at the beginning is Endurance. Luck is the black box, right? It is hard to evaluate luck because I quite literally don't know what it does, and I couldn't easily find resources telling me what it does. I wish the game was a little bit more clear about how leveling this impacted things. Because if this led to significant increases in, like, say, beneficial mushrooms dropping, or ammo, or healing items, or whatever the heck, maybe luck would be worthwhile, but right now this feels like casting points down a drain, and given how bad the rest of this is, I'm not confident that luck would be much better. So, yeah, I think all in all, leveling just feels kind of bad. I think, honestly, this game was easier at base level than it is now with all these bonuses, quote unquote, that I have from my stats, right? I'm almost disincentivized from leveling at this point because I feel like it's generating negative return on my difficulty to power gained. And I think because from my understanding, this level directly impacts how difficult the game is. And I think the fact that there's not a lot of power that comes from here, it all comes from Arcana instead, which I'll get into in a sec. I think more power should come from here to help balance that out. And so here's some ideas, right? I think stats overall just need to be more important. Here's some changes I would make. So I think Vitality, in addition to increasing your max health, it should also influence how much focus you lose when you get hit, right? The more Vitality you are, the better you are at shrugging off hits, you lose less focus. And I think even after a certain point, it should affect how much stamina damage you take, right? Like your ability to endure hits suddenly becomes a lot more valuable because you can still move while getting hit, which is something that's not very common. Vitality giving that to you would make Vitality an interesting stat to level. I think healing I would rename to Recovery, because I think it should affect all healing sources. And in the general, I would also rework how healing items work. But for now, let's talk about it. I think healing pots should heal a percentage of your life, right? Like the healing pot that you start with or you have should heal 40% base, and then this healing stat would increase that percentage. But that stat would also affect all healing. So if you ate a beneficial mushroom on the ground, it would heal you more as well. And I think to kind of emphasize healing as a stat, or recovery rather, is that I would also add more potions to the game, right? Instead of just the base potion, I would also, you have the 40% one that heals you over like 5 seconds. And I would say, let's add an 80% healing pot that heals you over like 20 seconds. Or like, if we want to get really wild, a pot that heals you 100%, but like it takes away your focus and stuns you or something weird, right? Like now it has a drawback. Making the healing stat better, having it touch more things, and giving it more things to touch, right, would make this a better level, right? Something to focus on as a PowerPoint. I think endurance is already the best stat in the game. But since we're overhauling everything, let's go ahead and touch this too, right? I think maybe the change I would make, instead of increasing max stamina, I would argue for a percent cost reduction in stamina consumption. That way, the entire game is about going on offense and building your focus bar. But then, right, the more you level your stamina, the farther your stamina goes. So then if you're at high focus, you're just infinitely mobile. But even at lowish focus, if you have a high endurance stat, you can still perform a lot of actions. Um, I think endurance, and maybe I would call it athleticism instead, if it affected like your general movement speed and your jump height, I think would be neat as well. Witchery is also very strong in the current state of the game, I feel. But since we're adding stuff, I would want Witchery to impact the your ability to resist status effects. Metanoia. I think as it stands, this stat is just not very good or worth investing in. And I think the main change I would make to Metanoia is I would just call the stat Witchfire maybe, and staple demonic guns to it, right? Demonic guns currently don't have any sort of advancement. And I think if I have some problems with demonic guns I would get into a second, or rather I'll get into it now. Demonic guns are kind of shaky because they require the special ammo, right? And it's hard to get that special ammo unless you pop an ammo chest early, which then causes other problems that I think are worse than not having special ammo. And I think the way to make demonic guns an interesting choice is to make demonic guns run on Witchfire, right? It costs me Witchfire dollars to load and shoot the demonic gun. So like the crossbow we get, right? Let's say 5 rounds cost me $1,000 or 1,000 Witchfire. I think that would give a reason to have increased gains in Witchfire a desirable outcome, but B, I would scale the power of Witchfire guns with the Metanoia stat, right? That each Witchfire weapon or demonic gun has a special attribute that scales with this Metanoia stat. You know, like the demonic arrows seeks more things, or like if you had a demonic gun that was a railgun, right? And it's like you increase the critical damage you deal based on that stat. You know, your demonic guns run on Witchfire and they also scale with this stat. I think that would be a neat addition and make it worth having. Luck is still a black box. Honestly, in my head, I would staple luck to Metanoia without knowing what it does. If luck does scale stuff in a great and interesting way, I would leave it to you guys to figure it out and hopefully just tell me what the heck to do. So that's my quick rundown on stats and why I think they need to be reworked and how I would rework them. The other big pain point in the game for me currently is the workshop mirror. Timers are a free-to-play mechanic in a game I paid $40 for. And this is why I feel like my progression on this has been significantly slower than my progression on the mirror, is because it feels like it's a lot easier to advance the mirror than to advance this. Or rather, like a good run will advance you a lot of levels, but not a lot of this. So let's talk about, how I would fix that. Is that the mirror should be a store ran exclusively by money, right? Even to the degree is that rather than like treasure extracting from the map and then coming here and being a non-bound item, I would make money its own currency, right? Treasure trades for a lot of currency, but you also just get some money from opening chests around the world, right? It is a slow item you gain over time, and then you can boost that with treasure. And I would even like create in-game economy to where you could trade Witchfire for treasure or money, and money for Witchfire at a 50% rate, right? Your hard Witchfire crystals, to be specific, not your floating currency that you have from just killing things. So that way, if I have a lot of Witchfire and not a lot of money, I could turn that into money if I wanted to really progress this thing. And then second, I really don't like the black box mechanics here, right? I don't like having to research something and I don't know what I'm going to get out. because either this is completely random and that's bad, or it is in order, which makes even less sense, because if it comes out in a certain order, just tell me what I'm going to get next so I can figure out whether or not I want to buy it. Yeah, like this just feels like an unnecessary piece of grind that really should be worked out of the game, because this isn't a free-to-play thing, right? I paid to play this, and I, have other things to do apart from, grind a game to unlock all the things that are, I should just have an easier way to get to. If for whatever reason y'all really stick to your guns, I wish I could research two of the same node at the same time. I think that just make things easier. If it's gonna suck, at least make it suck in a way I can be okay with. And similarly, and this kind of ties in with the mirror, is I think item progression is too slow. The enemies killed, second Mysterium actions, the third Mysterium incantation, this is all too much, right? It takes a significant amount of investment and effort to advance items, right? Between the amount of time in the world you have to take to kill stuff, between spending, or honestly, I would say wasting research time on top of everything else on the Mysterium incantations and the third Mysterium incantation, right? Like, all of this feels bad. And then also having to research your modifiers for your run also sucks. This should just happen when you level. Once again, the game should not be this grindy, right? It really, should just not be this grindy. Respect the player's time. Tone these down. And even the other thing that's a problem with progression is a lot of stuff tends to non-bow, right? This gun, for instance, cares about killing things. In fact, almost all the progression cares about killing stuff. But then, one of the first relics I ever got was something that kills stuff when it's at low life, right? It does 90 damage, it most of the time kills it, and it makes it impossible to advance most weapons while I have this equipped, and that really sucks. Because this is a cool and good item that really enables a lot of powerful gameplay, and it just straight up doesn't work with a lot of progression. And to some degree, it's the same thing with spells doing damage too. To fix that, I think guns should just care about doing damage, right? Deal X amount of damage, get X amount of critical hits, caring about kills makes it not work. I think changing it to damage would, and once again, I would tune the overall grind down. Because it's just frustrating to have to spend so much time leveling something, and then to find out, like, especially sometimes leveling things up sucks. The hunger, insanely powerful. Each level of this gun made it dramatically better than the last. This gun is insane in how good it is compared to, like, the all-seeing eye, right? First perk, insane. That's a great perk to have. The second perk almost non-bows with itself. It's not, like, bad, but it's not very good, because a lot of the time it turns off the bonus damage I get from the first perk if I have, like, 2 or 3 enemies together. And so it creates this weird scenario where getting a couple of crits on, like, a batch of 3 makes it less efficient than it was previously. And that, like, I need really big groups of enemies for this to make sense. Strange upgrade. And I wish, like most things, it was less black boxy, because I don't think I would have wasted the resources on this level up if I had known that it was so weak comparatively. And then third, when it comes to weapon progression, is with how the difficulty scales with your level and this, that, and the other, it seems really difficult once you get past a certain point in the game to go back to using guns that don't have like this sort of power that the hunger does, right? Especially because, once again, I have to get kills with these too. And, you know, the game difficulty gets to a point where it's just outright hard to use these guns now. And I wish there was a mechanic, or rather, I think this is a problem that'll probably only get worse as I get further into the game. And I think there needs to be a catch-up mechanic for weapons you research later into the run or later into the game that you can basically get upgrades on bypassing the grind requirement. And honestly, if I didn't have to grind at all, I think that'd be best. If it was strictly driven by money, like the store, I think that would fix my issue. And you just have, if progression is slow, you just tune the amount of money the player gets, or tight to the luck stat. And so, given that, I think there should be another currency, money, that's bound. I think treasure should be more common, be worth more. And I would argue even like the lesser treasure should drop on death. And that in turn, if you get away with your treasures, you sell them for coins, which is just a hard currency that always sticks with you. And you can use it to fuel the previous changes that I mentioned. Something I thought of, a reason why things might be the way they were, is that the current mirroring system like kind of guarantees progress if you happen to be dying a lot. I think a way to kind of keep this really not fun free-to-play timer system is to make treasure really common, right? If, like, through player skill, I can earn an absurd amount of treasure relatively quickly to kind of bypass this whole waiting nonsense, I think that would also be a solution for this. And then, likewise, I would still make it so that I could upgrade my weapons without having to grind them. And so that's mostly the leveling progression side of things, right? So now let's talk about some gameplay stuff. Currently, calamities are just kind of awful. There's no beating around the bush on it. Calamities seem insanely difficult to clear when you don't just close the vent. Every time I've intended to try to do it, I've died. And closing the vent, at least with this gun in particular, is so trivial, it doesn't make sense to do it the other way, right? It is always advantageous for me. It doesn't matter what I am doing. When a calamity triggers, to run to where the calamity is and close it immediately, because this kills skulls in one shot. Yeah, it's just every time it happens, there's not even a choice to make. It's just run, go close it the easy way. And I think that's bad, because mostly at that point it's just a time wasting mechanic, because there's nothing that stops me from doing that either. I think calamities, instead of being their own isolated event, whenever the witch notices you in a situation or doing something, it should amp up the difficulty of your next encounter in some way, right? Like it spawns extra enemies, it gives a modifier, it locks you in a certain area, maybe it deploys more traps, something that interacts with the game more, right? Because, yeah, in its current state, it's just a time waster, and it's mostly obnoxious. Speaking of things, I think gun balance is a little bit weird. And maybe it's design philosophy-y, but currently I think there is no gun that is better than the hunger. The sheer output that this weapon is capable of is absurd. It is just strictly the best gun I have unlocked of the 4 that I've got. This one I feel should, because without the damage bonus it does less than the hunger does, and that feels really weird given the really slow rate of fire. I imagine the design choice is that the ability to engage at long range is why you don't want it to do more damage, but I wish this gun just was able to kill things slightly better. The other two guns I have, the Midas and the Cricket. The Midas seems really solid overall. I wish I could experiment with it more. I just don't want to deal with having to grind it up to find the extra stats. The Cricket does seem really strong, but I feel like I have to be picking the enemy's nose in order to use it. And when I'm at that range, like, it feels much better to be here with the hunger than here with the Cricket. And I think if you gave the Cricket just a little bit more reach, it would give it a reason to compete against like this obscene powerhouse choice of a gun. But I imagine weapon tuning is something that's on the radar, and hopefully things will work out even just over time, right? So far, I haven't really interacted with magic much, just Fireball and Iron Cross. Part of it, and this is talking about Nombos again. Where's my dash button? There we go. The fact that the fact that this doesn't count as a weak point hit really sucks for the purpose of using the hunger, right? And it feels kind of nombo-y, and it really hurts the damage output of this gun when you miss a crit shot in order to get that stun chance, right? And swapping weapons doesn't seem like the greatest solution in the world either. It is a solution, but it's not a great one. And so I wish that for all things that cared about getting crit hits, that there counted as a crit hit. Even like it triggering the AoE would make, from this gun, would make the AoE effect of this gun a little bit more interesting to take. Because now it's like, oh, crit hit, do a bunch of damage, get the stun hit, do more damage. Making this into a crit point to trigger crit effects, I think, would be a good change for the game. And yeah, now I'm just kind of starting to talk about the random catch-all things I've noticed that I think should be fixed. Another change I would make is it seems there's a lot of parts in this game that don't let you jump off cliffs, right? And maybe here's a weird scenario, but even on the first map, right, you can't walk out past the ocean. But then there are parts of the map where you can fall off just fine. And I think that the game needs to treat all edges similarly, right? If I can fall off of some edges, I feel like I should be able to fall off of all edges. Or if I can't fall off of some edges, then I shouldn't be able to fall off of any edges. And that's mostly it, right? Most of my problems with this game mostly stem from progression and the kind of really bad leveling system right now. And the fact that I think the demonic ammo guns need to be overhauled a little bit, and I think there's a lot of interesting ways to do that. And honestly, my unreserved take is that the game was really fun when I first started, right? I think the gameplay feels good. It's interesting. I think it rewards dodging a little bit too much, and I think changing the way vitality works would help fix that a little bit. I definitely enjoyed it at first, but when I started getting bogged down by the progression systems and the kind of really not great return on leveling up my character, it really felt bad, right? Because the game was getting a lot harder and I was not getting a lot stronger until I started making a lot more progress on the workshop mirror, which is why I think the workshop mirror should be easier to progress, because I think it was on my third or fourth run I was starting to full clear the first map. So I was getting a lot of Witchfire, but I wasn't getting a lot of treasure. And it feels like there's really cracks in the foundation, and I think the longer the game gets without like these sorts of issues being fixed, I think the worse the experience is going to get. And it doesn't build my confidence in the future of this game unless like progression itself gets smoothed out a little bit. So I'm hopeful of the game. There's good stuff going on here, but I definitely wouldn't recommend it to anyone, at least until either the progression gets fixed or the game gets so damn good it doesn't matter. In either case, we're not there yet. In general, I think the act of clicking on heads feels good. The movement is good. The general combat encounter design is okay-ish. I wish there was less ranged mobs all the time. Because it feels like in order to be successful, I either have to be Jackie Chan or John Woo. Or what is often more happens, I'm finding choke points and just killing all the ranged mobs with my big rifle and killing anything that gets close with my absurdly powerful handgun. I think the magic is cool. I do not regret a single point that I spent in casting magic. Every time it has felt good. I think there's strong, interesting mechanics. I think thematically the only change I would make, because it seems like Fireball causes them to take more damage and Decay causes them to lose life consistently. And I think it should be the other way around, right? That Fireball burns them and slowly kills them, and Decay makes their armor weaker, making them take more damage. But that's just a nitpick. I like all the movement that you're allowed to do in the game, right? The double jump, the dashing, the everything else. I just like wish it wasn't so expensive on stamina. But once again, I think changing endurance to be percent reduction and making it so you can move faster, I think would help address both of those issues. That's about it. If you happen to watch this and you're like, hey, I would be interested in seeing you play the game, if for whatever reason you think that would be valuable, be sure to let me know in the comments, and I'll sit down and I'll record some gameplay footage. Particularly if you're looking for something specific, let me know and I'll try to capture that. That being said, if you made it all the way here, thanks for listening to me ramble about this game for a while. If you are a dev, hopefully you think all my feedback is great and you make all these changes. Obviously, this isn't my game, though. It's yours. Act with your best intent. And hopefully your vision overpowers mine to such a degree that I change my mind, I suppose. But currently, this is where I stand, and hopefully, I don't know, you find some value in my ideas. Yeah, no, that's it. Thanks for the listen/watch. I hope you all have a wonderful day. I guess I'll do the YouTuber thing for my very first YouTube video. Leave comments, thoughts, concerns, whatever. I'll be sure to read them and share more if I feel necessary. Farewell.